everybody. Al Bernstein here with another one of our Hot Topics show. And on this one, I get to weigh in on topics that boxing fans are thinking about or ones that I want to bring to their attention. The first one is a sad one, the passing of Mike McCallum, a great Jamaican fighter who was both a middleweight, or junior middleweight, and light heavyweight champion, and had a Hall of Fame career. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2003. He has passed on and left memories both inside and outside the ring that touched all of us. Everyone that knew Mike McCallum in the boxing world liked and respected him. And how could you not marvel at what he did in the ring? It was an extraordinary career. He won his first world title in the middleweight division in his late 20s, and defended that six times, which was against very, very tough competition. Then he would win the middleweight title at age 33. So he was already well into his 30s, defended that several times before losing it, and then later would win the light heavyweight championship against Reggie Harding. And there were several aspects of Mike McCallum's career that were fascinating. One of his rivals was James Toney, who, of course, also a Hall of Fame fighter and a fighter from that era that was an astonishing technician in the ring. And the interesting thing about their rivalry is Toney was 12 years younger than Mike McCallum. And so when McCallum was fighting him, he was much older, even at the beginning of their rivalry. And he fought a draw in the first fight with McCallum. Then after that, a majority decision a couple years later. And again, he was in his mid to late 30s when he was fighting Toney, who was much younger. And then finally, in one of his final fights, he lost a decision to James Toney as a cruiserweight, which is pretty remarkable. So they created this amazing rivalry that while two of the fights didn't go McCallum's way and one was a draw, it was when they were in the ring, especially the first two times, you were watching remarkable skills being exhibited. It was truly astonishing. And Mike McCallum fought a resume that was, as good as you can possibly get. And he went over to England at one point when he was middleweight champion, had 3 straight fights in the UK, and beat the best of the fighters over there. And they were really good fighters: Michael Watson, Steve Collins, and Harold Graham. And that's quite a gauntlet to run through, especially fighting on the road in their home country. So a remarkable man. McCallum leaves us and leaves us all sadder with his passing. He was certainly one of the ring greats. Hot topic number 2, and that is the upset that we just saw, and the larger picture of upsets in 2025. We just saw Armando Reséndiz upset Caleb Plant in an important 168-pound matchup. Reséndiz went in a pretty big underdog, though most people had seen him fight and I'd announced several of his fights, knew he was competent and had a chance to make this fight very competitive. We did a lot more than that. He won the fight, despite the one absurd scorecard from David Sutherland that turned it into a split decision. But he did get the upset win over Caleb Plant. Okay, so 2025, can we start calling it the year of the upset? We're about halfway through, and we have seen our share of upsets. Rolly Romero, most recently, beating Ryan Garcia. Echo Esserman beating Josh Taylor in another fight. Jorge Garcia upset Charles Conwell in a 154-pound fight, though Garcia was a top contender, and I think some people made it out to be a bigger upset than it was. It was certainly an upset. I did the fight for our Salida Promotions Big Time Boxing series, in which Nestor Bravo lost to Ndonjeni, and a South African fighter who was a big underdog coming into that fight. And remember Tiara Brown upsetting Sky Nicholson in another important upset. So as we look down these list of upsets, it has been a year that has provided more than its share. And moving forward, a lot of big fights on the docket. You have to wonder how many more will there be. But right now, we're upwards of 5 or 6 pretty remarkable upsets that have happened in the sport of boxing. So we're not quite there to call 2025 the year of the upset, but we're maybe heading in that direction. All right, how about topic number 3 is me making a confession. So everybody knows that is knowledgeable about my boxing announcing career that I do not pick winners in fights that I'm going to announce. It's a rule I've made for myself and never broke it. Well, another rule that might not be known, but is one I've adhered to, is that I don't ever bet on a fight that I'm announcing. Now, I don't bet much on boxing to begin with. It's just not a thing I've done very often, very sporadic. But the rule was never bet on a fight you're going to announce because it would create to me a conflict of interest. Now, I know other boxing announcers who have bet and do bet on fights they announce. I know other sportscasters who will do that on events they announce. I broke the rule once though, and I'm going to admit to it now. And it was a very fascinating experience because it happened back in 1984, June 1st, 1984, when Gene Hatcher from Fort Worth, Texas, was fighting Johnny Bumpus for the 140-pound title. And Bumpus was 23 years old, had been an amateur champion and an Olympian, and he was considered a rising star in the sport of boxing. Dazzling boxer. And that night was the night of another upset. It was that fight was on the card where Ray Mancini lost to Livingstone Bramble in what was an upset at the time, a big upset. Well, this one preceded it, and I bet on that fight. I bet on Gene Hatcher, who was a big underdog to Johnny Bumpus. Gene had fought on the ESPN series, the Top Rank series that I had done for 4 years previous to that. And I knew he was a very good fighter. He was an aggressive fighter. And I just felt like he was too strong ultimately for Johnny Bumpus. And I bet on him. And the fight itself was interesting because Johnny Bumpus was boxing very effectively. But occasionally during the course of those early rounds would get in firefights with Hatcher and still kind of hold his own, even though at a couple points, like in the 5th round, he was stunned. He showed some pop in his punch that maybe people thought hadn't been there to keep Hatcher off him. And now we're heading into the later rounds of that fight, and I'm announcing it, and I'm thinking to myself all the while I'm announcing this fight, and I have listened back to the fight 3 or 4 times, and I don't think my call was biased because I bet on Hatcher. I was able to separate those two things, but I know that internally it was bothering me that I'm thinking about my bet, and meanwhile I'm announcing this fight. So the fight goes on, and we get into the 11th round, and Hatcher, by the 10th round, Hatcher hurt Bumpus. And it looked like this might start the end of things. Well, turns out in the 11th round, it did, in fact, end the fight. Hatcher was able to knock him out after a lot of crazy, wild action in that round. The referee stopped the fight, and Gene Hatcher won the match. It was so vexing to me, even though I won the bet, that I absolutely then decided it is inappropriate to bet on a fight I'm announcing. And more than that, too stressful. So after that, some 41 years ago, have never bet on a fight since then that I announced. Well, that's our hot topics for this edition. Hope you enjoyed it. If you do, please, and you like the other content here on the Salida Promotions channel, both the fights and also our shows that we do, please subscribe, and we'll see you next time.